takes a special person to always speak the truth. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and I should start by saying that one of the most valuable assets of a Pentagon worker is their credibility. We often talk about how it's all about relationships, and at the core of those relationships is your credibility. In fact, in a lot of offices, what the leadership is doing as they test and develop action officers is really cultivating that credibility. And it's useful to understand that your credibility is really a combination of your behavior and your reputation. At the most basic level, being credible means that what you say is true and that people know that about you. Now, there is this weird social network dynamic to this because no matter how smart, capable, and well-intentioned you are, if nobody knows you, well, you're not credible. And by the same token, if you're a snake in the grass and everybody knows it, well, you're not credible. And you might be thinking, well, if a bunch of people know me and I do good work, then I'm credible, right? Maybe, maybe not. See, that's where this social network aspect comes in. It matters if the people who know you are also credible. So developing your credibility is sort of this continuous social process. It might seem like I'm being silly about this, but trust me, there will come a panicked moment in the life of some political appointee, and they will reach down to a credible 3-star, who reaches over to a credible 2-star, who turns to a credible SES, who says the name of some lieutenant colonel, and suddenly that young lady finds herself working on the Army's most pressing problems. And I want you to notice something. I did not say they reach out to somebody they trust. Trust is a relationship between one person and another person, while credibility is really a relationship between one person and an organization. What that means is that when somebody says, I got this information from Lieutenant Colonel Donovan, that a wide group of people trust that information because they all know that Lieutenant Colonel Donovan is credible. So how do you go about developing your credibility? Well, just remember, it's the combination of your behavior and your reputation. And as always, the thing you have the most control over is your behavior. But how do you behave in a manner so that what you say is always true? Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. The number of things that you are completely ignorant of is infinite. See, a lot of people, when they hear that the key to credibility is always saying things that are true, what they interpret that to mean is that the things they say are always right. But you can't always be right. The number of things that you don't know is infinite. And if you took the time and effort to learn 10,000 new things, you would still be ignorant about an infinite number of things. And so, I'll tell you that one of the most important things that you're going to have to say that is true is, I don't know. Oh, and for those of you who are trying to guess where I'm going, I am not going to endorse that phrase, I don't know, but I'll get you the answer. That phrase is not always true. In fact, if you misuse the I don't know, but I'll get you an answer phrase, over the long term, you can actually damage your credibility. And that's because there is a big difference between I don't know, but I have the information on my desk, and I don't know because the data that would be necessary to answer that question simply doesn't exist. So that leads us to the next aspect of building your credibility. Eventually, you are going to run into somebody who knows something that you don't know. You are going to say something that you believe to be true, and this other person is going to prove you wrong, often in a very public and humiliating manner. So the next step to developing your credibility has to do with how you deal with this situation. You cannot just dig in your heels and fight this person tooth and nail. You have to switch to figuring out, why are they right? In fact, even if you don't care about developing your credibility within this organization, this tactic is a key to winning arguments. You see, when they say you're wrong, it means they have some fact, some piece of information that if they shared it, then everybody would know the truth. So what you do is you press for that fact they have to be shared. If they don't share it, then they don't have it, which means they are not right, and for the time being, you are not wrong. Sometimes the fact that they end up sharing has nothing to do with the situation at hand, and this often comes up when large organizations interact. I mean, the person you're dealing with is from another organization, and they assume that an internal policy to their organization applies to everybody. Of course, then there's the situation where the other guy has that fact, and they share it, and it turns out to be true, and then you have to say the other thing that is true that builds your credibility. I was wrong. That stops a lot of arguments because it's true. In fact, refusing to defend yourself when you have learned that you were wrong, well, that's going to save a lot of time and effort. And if you want to put an extra bonus on this I was wrong message, what you do is publicly thank the person who corrected you. Some of you may have heard me say that there is a limit of 15 soldiers per lane, but I was wrong. Lieutenant Colonel Horowitz pointed out that you can have 20 soldiers on a lane if you submit a request through range control. The slick part about this extra little flourish is that it increases Lieutenant Colonel Horowitz's credibility. Now everybody knows that Lieutenant Colonel Horowitz is an expert in range control policy. Lieutenant Colonel Horowitz feels like they have won an argument with you. And the whole time, you're saying things that are true. Now, there is one issue with this whole credibility thing that I would caution you about. Don't get so hung up on this saying things that are true point that you're continuously qualifying everything you say. Nothing is more irritating than an action officer who prefaces every single statement with, I think, or, now don't quote me on this, or, to the best of my knowledge. There are going to be times when you have to qualify yourself, but you need to develop the intuition to sense when these moments are. The rule of thumb I use is that when I'm prepping some general officer and they suddenly latch on to something I just said, that is the moment to caveat yourself. You don't want your general going for the jugular on some other general on a point that his staff might counter. I mean, I don't want to damage the general's credibility because that's not doing anybody any favors. The last thing about credibility is, at least in the Pentagon, it takes years to develop it. This is a place with thousands of people, so it takes a long time to develop all of the knowledge that you need and to develop relationships with enough people to impact that social network. If you want a quick guide to the desirable traits of action officers, watch this video. And if you want to see the qualities of the different types of bureaucrats, watch this one.